Clayton, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us some of your thinking about what transpired at Bowdoin over the past 15 months and what you see coming forward.
I'm happy to do it, Andy, and you're great to do this for us, so thank you for making the time.
I know you've talked about seeing your grandchildren and how important that is, and I want to ask you about maybe talking to them 10 years from now about what happened over the past year during COVID at Bowdoin College.
That's a great question. So I'd answer that in a couple of ways. I think the first is that it was a time when the best of the Bowdoin community came shining through. We were dealing with enormous uncertainty, very scary issues that were life and death, a lack of leadership in a number of different areas, and yet the Bowdoin community, the faculty, staff, the students, our alumni, our parents, the folks in Brunswick, all kind of rallied together to do the very best we could to get through the time in a way that kept everybody safe, kept us focused on our central mission of educating our students, and the kind of grace and gratitude and forgiveness and engagement and care and compassion were all present in a way that I think we know that this is what Bowdoin is about, but we were tested in a way that I'm not sure we ever have been, certainly in a very long time, but perhaps ever in our history in quite this way. And so it was a remarkable thing to see. I think the other aspect of this that I would share with them, I'm not sure 10 years they'll be ready to absorb that, but at some point, is that the administration, the faculty, the staff, the board of trustees were dealing with decisions on matters where we had never made decisions before. And while we had, expertise that was available to us among all of those groups, and certainly outside expertise that we would call upon, at the end of the day, you have to make some decisions. And so every day, every week, every month, we were confronted with small and large decisions in areas where we had no muscle memory. And you have to, two things come of that. Ultimately, you have to rely on your judgment and get all the facts and the data, and the rest of the world's going through this as well. But you also have to be willing to adapt and change your mind and move to a different position. And we've done that over the course of several months, and we've done that over the course of several weeks when conditions suggested that we needed to change, or when we learned something from a decision we made which suggested we needed to change as well. And you can't let your ego get in the way of trying to make the right decisions here. So those are two things I would share with them.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that decision-making thing because that's so critical. And how many major course corrections did you feel like you made during the year? Or did your thinking become more clear at a certain point? It seems like it's more clear now. We have a path forward, right?
Yeah, now we know a lot, and we feel like we're all experts, and I think to some extent we are. In terms of, there were many minor course corrections, things where we have a whole decision structure at the college of senior staff and other staff who have expertise and responsibilities in certain areas, we'd make a decision in a week, and a couple of weeks later we'd adjust and change that. I think in terms of major course corrections, I will share this. We haven't really talked much about this more broadly, but last June, you will remember this, the board was, we were involved in conversations on a regular basis, weekly, if not more frequently, about all of this. Before it became clear, before we knew we had access to the testing program that the Broad Institute had available, and we'd been investigating testing, but there wasn't testing that was reliable, quick turnaround, or cheap enough. And so we were really frustrated with the fact that we weren't going to be able, and we're not a large research university, so our ability to build our own testing program was really not a viable option for us, although we did explore that. So for a period of time, it wasn't clear that we could have anybody back on campus because we didn't have that firewall that testing provides for you, where you can identify somebody who's infected quickly and then put them in isolation and take care of them and quarantine those who are close contacts and make sure that it doesn't spread. given the rate of contagion of COVID-19, it's a really challenging issue. So for a while, that was where we were moving towards. Then we discovered the Broad program, and I remember having a conversation with Eric Lander, who ran the Broad and is now the president's science advisor, on a Sunday afternoon about the program and asking him what it would entail. And it was quick turnaround, highly accurate, designed for nonprofits in New England and in the region, and relatively inexpensive. And so my last question to him was, where do we sign up? And the Broad was game-changing for so many colleges and universities and other nonprofits. And so then we were able to move into a place where we could really resume operations in the way that we did for the course of the year.
Of course, some people said that you and the college were too risk-averse and too cautious. Were they right? And are they complaining still now?
So I haven't heard many of those voices for a while, but I'm certain that there are people who share that view and have that view, that we were too risk-averse. I think, as I've said in other places, knowing everything I know now and everything we've learned, I think we made the right decisions. And I don't say that from a defensive posture or a protection of my ego. I've taken lots of input and heard a fair amount of criticism in various pockets over the course of the year. But I've been involved in my career over 40 plus years in issues of risk management in one form or another, both for large organizations, but also in the finance business and running trading operations, running complex trading operations, being involved in some of the major financial blow-ups that have, not causing them, but having to pick up the pieces in the aftermath. And one of the things that I've learned over that time is that good risk management is about making sure that when things go wrong, you're able to remain standing, not being able to get through it if everything goes right and how you thread that needle. And in this case, the stakes are much higher than what I was dealing with in finance. We're talking about the health and safety of our community. We're talking about life and death. And there was an enormous amount that we didn't know in the summer leading into the fall, and even in the fall leading into the winter semester, about how this would spread, when it would come back, and what the health ramifications were going to be for folks. And we still don't fully understand the long-term health implications of COVID-19 for those who contracted it as well. And we're going to learn more about that over time. So, I'd also say, Andy, that we set for ourselves two primary goals last June when we were looking forward to this academic year. The first was protecting the health and safety of our campus community and the broader Brunswick community. And the second was to deliver to every Bowdoin student, no matter where they were going to be, as great a Bowdoin education as we could under the constraints of COVID-19. We've done that, I think, very well. Not perfect, but very well on both of those scores. And so I'm proud of that accomplishment. And I think that's a function of the model that we put in place. Other schools had models like ours. Some have done better, some have done worse. Other schools had different models. Some have done better, some have done worse. This was the right model for us.
What do you think the takeaways are for students who went to college during COVID?
That answer depends a little bit on where you were in college, I think. So there are maybe three groups I would think about. The first are seniors. The second are the sophomores and juniors. And then the third group are our first-year students, or first-year students at college more generally. For those who were seniors this year, it was very difficult for every student, having to operate in a situation where, whether you were on campus or not on campus, your ability to be in person in a classroom and engage with your faculty in that way were completely changed on you. But for our seniors at every college and university, that experience as a college student of all of the things that you do that are outside of the classroom, whether it's the arts, theater and dance, outdoors, athletics, and then parties and social engagements and being with your friends, all of those were seriously diminished and in many cases just absent completely. And then there was the anxiety, fear, challenge of managing through COVID, and many of our students had family issues, and some had family tragedies that were associated with COVID. And so that last year of college, which can be so magical in so many ways, was diminished in a very real way for our students. For our first year students, they were leaving, having had high school, in the last bit of high school and their graduation taken away from them. They now come into a situation which is very different from what they expected. So many of the aspects of getting to know college and socializing and developing friendships and engaging in all of those activities were taken off the table for them. We tried our very best. We had them on campus in the fall and had the first year seminars in person so that they could begin to engage in a true Bowdoin education in an in-person sense of that word. But it was very hard for our first year students, because coming to college and learning college and developing the values and helping to set the culture were all kind of absent, and we'll have to figure out how to make up for that. We're working on that for next year. For our sophomores and juniors, it represents pieces of a year that were lost, but they in some ways were were dealt the best hand of a very bad set of hands that were dealt. They had the opportunity to come in and get to know the place and get to know one another and understand college, and they've still got time left to be able to get back to what a normal college experience and to end their college careers in that way. Let me just add one other thing, Andy, which is that and I'm going to steal from Tony Fauci, who last night gave his fireside chat with Judy Courier as one of our honorary degree recipients. And he said that life is going to present challenges, and that this is and he acknowledged the unfairness and what was diminished about this year, particularly for the seniors who he was addressing at this moment. But he said these challenges are going to arm you to do great things and to be able to deal with what comes forward. And that notion of the unexpected, he talked about some of the issues in his own career around that. I think I think there's something that's very important to take away from that as well. This wasn't anything anybody wished upon any of us, our students, and the rest of the world. But having gone through it and managed it in such a terrific way, I am hopeful that our students will have learned some things about themselves, internalize some of that, and will do great things with that when they're out in the world dealing with really profound problems.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, and I agree. And Clayton, I had a daughter who was a senior last year and went through that, and I think it is a test of resiliency, and maybe at some point down the road, a badge of honor. Mm-hmm. It'll certainly be a distinctive period to have gone to Bowdoin. Clayton, Rahm Emanuel, for better or for worse, said, you never want a serious crisis to go to waste. Right. And I'm wondering if that resonates with you in any way. Were there things that you were actually able to turn to your advantage when it comes to how the college was operating or thinking about things, particularly moving forward?
Yeah, let me take that in kind of a smaller way and then some bigger, longer-term things. As many of our alums know, we've had a number of virtual events this year, a huge number. I've done gatherings, as you know, with a dozen plus or minus alums that are hosted by someone, in many cases by someone on our board, where we take an hour in an evening and I'll talk for 10 minutes about some things going on, and then it's Q&A and conversation. And here we're pulling alums from every part of the country and around the world. I've done one where we had folks, most of them domestic, but two guys from Hong Kong who are calling in early in the morning. And it's an opportunity to bring people together in a very efficient way from around the country who all share a bond, who know each other, or maybe haven't seen each other for a really long time. They end up being really fun conversations because they focus on common sets of issues that are generational about their experiences on campus and so forth. I think we're definitely going to keep those. It's not going to be a substitute for my getting out and the rest of our staff getting out on the road to engage with our alums and our families. But also the kind of virtual events that Alumni Relations has put on this year has allowed us to bring guests to campus virtually, but also to have all of our alums share and parents share in that And we're going to figure out how to make that work going forward as well. So that's a specific example that I suspect resonates with folks who are watching. We're also very mindful that, notwithstanding the fact that nobody wanted to be in this situation, that there are things that we're going to take away here and will change how we operate forever. And let me describe the work that we're doing around that. We've established, going into this next academic year, 3 working groups. The first, which is being set up by our Dean for Academic Affairs, Jen Scanlon, and our Faculty Executive Committee, a group of faculty and IT staff who are going to look at what are the lessons, tools, insights, skills around technology, pedagogy, engagement in teaching and learning that we want to systematically take away from this year across all of our faculty, and then provide back to our faculty in a way that they have, a toolbox or a menu or whatever metaphor one wants to use to be able to improve the way they teach and the way our students learn. I've heard from a number of faculty. The board have heard from 2 faculty, a math professor in the winter, and most recently from one of our theater faculty, about how what they've done this year will change fundamentally how they think about their engagement with our students. One of the things we did this year, as you know, is to provide every student and every faculty member that wanted one with an iPad Pro and a pencil. And we had a view, we did this for 2 reasons. One was to create equity across all of our students with respect to technology. So we have those students who were most highly aided would not be at a disadvantage in technology relative to students who come from families where they may be able to afford their own iPad Pro. And so we wanted to level the playing field. But the other was to give our faculty the knowledge that they had, that every student had the same technology platform and access to exactly the same software so that they could teach in one place and not have to worry about who's got what and so forth. We thought about this for science, we thought about this for some of the quantitative courses, there were other areas. But as Abby Colleen, our theater professor, said, for theater this was game changing. And the camera and the software tools behind the camera allowed her to do things that she never imagined she would do. And we never considered that in the rationale for providing an iPad. So that's the first group. The second is around remote work. Everybody's thinking about what that means now as we've gone through this year. We have taken the decision that we're going to have everybody, all of our staff, faculty back on campus in the fall in a normal mode. And we're doing that for 2 reasons. The first is I think it's important for all of us to get back to a place where we understand and emotionally appreciate why working together is so valuable and why being together is so valuable. But we put together a working group of staff from around the college to look at the issue of remote work, to come up with assuming that they decide there is some value to it, and my suspicion is they will, but I don't know, what it should look like and what are a consistent set of policies that deal with equity across jobs and technology and professional development and a number of issues. And we didn't want to go back into a mode of remote work without having thought it through in a careful way and having that consistent set of policies so that we don't have one manager doing one thing and another manager doing another and create all sorts of problems. The third group is a group that I'm calling the Skunk Works group. And their job is to look at everything else that's gone on at the college over the last year, away from teaching and learning and away from remote work, and see what we should be learning and doing differently and doing better, or stop doing and doing in a different way. And I don't know what they're going to come up with, but my guess is we'll learn some things that we haven't really consciously processed yet. So, long answer. But.
Yeah, no, and it's just a lot of thinking about a truly singular time period and how to take advantage of that moving forward. Before we talk about the summer and fall and beyond, one last question about what went down over the past 15 months. And were there any moments of levity? Was there anything funny or remarkable that happened that will stick with you, sort of in that vein, Clayton?
Yeah, so let me say one thing. I think that recognizing the immense human tragedy that's taken place here around COVID, and at this stage we're at 600,000 Americans who've lost their lives and 3 million people worldwide. It's hard to overstate how tragic all of this is. But I also think that when you're working through a situation with human beings, and particularly one that has these profound elements of tragedy associated with it, humor is an important tool to keep us all motivated and moving forward, and recognizing that there's kind of a future here. And so there were, I don't think there were, an event that was kind of humor-based, but for everyone in the work we're doing, when we're in meetings and when we're engaged with one another, there are always opportunities to laugh, and we try to take advantage of those as therapy for all of us as we work through the period. So, and frankly, as a leader, I think one of my jobs is to, in a sense, I don't want to overstate this, but give permission to that, right? And so, a little bit of leading from the front, and you want to be mindful and careful and so forth. But that's an important thing I think for all of us to keep in mind, that it's a way to give ourselves permission to think about the future a little bit.
Right. All the different constituencies, the students, faculty, alumni, parents, et cetera.
Yeah.
So how are you thinking about the summer and fall? Just sort of a big picture, and then we can drill down into specific areas.
So big picture on the fall, back to normal. Everybody back on campus. In fact, more than everybody in terms of students, because of the nature of this year, we can talk about that. And all of our classes in person, nothing remote. My expectation is all of our normal activities will take place as they normally do. It's possible we may have some modest concessions to COVID protocols, but the more time that goes on, the more I'm not sure that's going to be true. So back to normal. The summer is walking our way into normal, and we'll have a few things on campus that have normally gone on, mostly focused on students and their activities and our faculty and their activities. So summer research projects in labs, all the normal things that a student would do on campus. Some of the outside activities, the Bowdoin International Music Festival, will be scaled back, but will be taking place. Upward Bound, a remarkable program for Maine high school students, will be taking place, scaled back a little bit. We'll have safety protocols in place and some requirements around vaccinations and so forth. But this allows us to kind of walk our way into what will happen in the fall.
And what are your priorities going forward? I assume returning to normal is probably the first one, but then once that's underway, what are you looking to accomplish, Clayton?
Yeah, well, getting back to the normal agenda of Bowdoin College. And, with respect to the work on campus, there are a number of really important issues that we have been working on, but we need to take to the next level. One is around the intellectual and curricular life of the college, and giving Jen Scanlon, our Dean for Academic Affairs, and the faculty the resources and the tools to continue to enhance the curriculum, but also for Jen and the faculty and me and others to think about, what's where are we going to be in 5 years, in 7 years? And as you know, it's available to all of our alums. I talk about it fairly regularly. We did a report a couple of years ago. I didn't do it, but a group of faculty, staff, students, trustees, led by faculty, what we shorthand to the K report, but what knowledge, skills, and creative dispositions do we want every student to have 10 years from now? And out of that work came a set of recommendations about areas we should focus. Greater digital and quantitative literacy for all of our students, more engagement with ethical issues. How do we think about some practical knowledge that helps our students really in the job market to complement the incredible skills that a liberal arts education provides them? So there are a series of issues, and those have been on hold, frankly, for the last year. We're now beginning to work on those and think about those, and we need a period for the summer for everybody to kind of catch their breath and get on with that. We've been working very hard in a new chapter around our diversity, equity, and inclusion and racial justice work. We spent a considerable period of time with the board talking about all of this. This is a profoundly important part of where the college is going and who we are. Great work this year in the context of the pandemic, and more work to do in the future. how we continue to make great progress on admissions and attract every remarkable student that will thrive here at Bowdoin to apply to Bowdoin and then find a way to continue to make sure that they can come here. To complete the campaign, the From Here campaign, 16 months in, we stand at $382 million today. If you'd told me that when we launched the public phase on Feb 6, 2020, I would have taken that and run away. To get that through a pandemic has been remarkable. It speaks volumes about our alumni and our families and the devotion they have to Bowdoin. But we have more work to do there to continue to do that. So those are some examples of the work ahead.
I want to dig into some of those points. Let me just ask you about athletics. What do you have to say to the athletes at Bowdoin, and where do you think athletics stand right now?
So, first of all, this has been a horrible year for students who are athletes, as well as students who are engaged in all kinds of serious pursuits that are central to who they are. 40% of our students are varsity athletes, and being an athlete is something that is central to who they are. And with a very kind of modest exceptions, none of our athletes this year were able to engage in any competition. We had a little bit in the spring, and very modest kind of engagement with their teammates and their coaches over the course of 2020, 2021. So it's been a horrible year, if specifically focused on athletics. Athletics is a central part of what we are and who we are at Bowdoin. Our central mission is on educating our students, but Division III athletics, our student athletes, the level and nature of competition, the ability to express themselves, to engage with their teammates, to go through the learnings that come from being a part of a team and being an elite athlete at the Division III level are all central to what we're doing and want to support that. I will say our coaches and everyone in the athletic department have been remarkable citizens this year. They've supported our student athletes in a variety of ways, both those who've been on campus and those who've been remote. And they've also been engaged in all kinds of work to help support the college away from their central role of being a coach or a member of the athletic department. Our head trainer, Dan Davies, stood up and ran the testing program that we have and has done that all year. He's been heroic in the work that he has done here. So,
people taking on different roles.
Yeah.
Racial justice, something that you've done quite a bit of work on. And I'm curious, what inning do you think we are in that process here at Bowdoin?
So let's talk about what the broad scope, the goals that we've articulated today are, and then where we are in that process. So we desire to be a college that accomplishes several things. The first is that there is equity of opportunity for outcomes, success, failure, lived experiences here, regardless of your race or ethnic background. And if we're real about it, and we're trying to be, that is not true today. We desire to be a place where everyone has the opportunity to share a similar sense of belonging, that this is your house, not a house you were invited into as a guest, but your house. And if we're real about it, we are not there yet today. We desire to be a place that through our educational mission arms our students to understand the issues around race and racism, and to develop the skills and the emotional fortitude to engage with these issues here on campus, but to be able to engage with these issues when they move into the world, become leaders, and are working to change for the better these issues in our society and in other societies as well. So we've got a equity of opportunity, a belonging, and an educational mission that come with this. We've been doing, and we need to acknowledge this as well, good work here for a long time. And you can go deep into Bowdoin's history and see some amazing human beings and some amazing institutional decisions that have supported that work. But we also have periods and work that we haven't done well, issues that we haven't faced as deliberately as we should. We've we've done terrific work in the last couple of decades, that has nothing to do with me, around increasing the representational diversity, the number of students on campus. We've been making some progress, not as much as we need to, around faculty, and not nearly as much as we need to around staff in the kind of representational diversity we have on campus. But in the issues of belonging, of equity of opportunity, and of that educational mission, we're in the first or second inning of that. And really the next move came about a year ago on the back of the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others, where every organization in this country, and I'm involved with some on the outside as well, have really thought about what the next body of work and the next level of commitment needs to be, and are going there, and we're doing that as well.
You've made a number of statements pertaining to newsworthy events over your tenure, and I'm curious, why do you do that, and how do you decide when to do that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and you can go back to the first convocation address I gave in 2015, where I talked about race in this country and the challenges that as a country we face and as a college we face. In some ways, having reread some of that, all of it recently, it still resonates, but it seems a little bit simplistic and naive too, as well, given some of the things that have gone on in the last 6 years. I'm now at the end of my 6th year. But since then, I've made public statements about the violence and the racism embedded in what happened in Charlottesville. I've talked about our DACA and undocumented students and the needs that and the moral obligation we have to support them. I've talked about gun violence in this country. I've talked about race and racism in all kinds of different ways, anti-Semitism. Most recently, talked about what happened on January 6th and the insurrection on the Capitol. And most recently, about the voting law in Georgia. And to ask our alumni to consider supporting Ken Chenault and a number of other members of our community who are very engaged in, as a group in that work. I believe that every leader of an organization in this country, but particularly an educational organization, has an obligation to be public on the values of and the mission of that institution, and in this case of our college. And I believe that our college, deeply into our institutional bones, is a college that abhors and wants to fight racism, that it wants to be an anti-racist institution, that abhors gun violence, that believes in the fundamental, nonpartisan, non-political notion that voting is the central linchpin to our democracy in this country. Having said that, there are those among our community, within our community, that disagree with me, that thought I was wrong to speak about this issue or that issue. And I respect that. I disagree with them, and I disagree with them strongly, but I respect the fact that people are going to have a different point of view. When individuals write me about these issues, with a few exceptions, I respond to all of them. Depends on what they've written and their point of view and so forth. But I try to be responsive. I try to acknowledge that. But this is a very challenging time in our country. Among the most divisive in the history of our country, along political, social, and cultural lines. And and saying anything or not saying something will create issues. And so there are a number of things I don't say things about, and there are some things that I do say things about because I believe that they represent the values of our college.
Clayton, how has Bowdoin managed to avoid one of those very public incidents or flashpoints of agitation, either by the left or the right, students, faculty, or the left and the right against each other on campus? Also a really great question. So let's go back to my inaugural address, where I've talked there, and I've talked frequently since, that a great college or university
has an obligation to be a place where we learn the skills of discourse and discussion and debate in a respectful and thoughtful way around the most difficult issues of our time. And that we are a place that invites in discussion about different points of view, particularly points of view with which we may strongly disagree. And so I have talked about this, and I have also tried to lead by example and support those on in our campus who want to further that part of our mission. So I talk to, when I welcome our first years on the steps of the museum each August, my central message to them is that they're here to become intellectually fearless. And that's a phrase that I've used each time. It's become a phrase in the water here a little bit, which is great. Sometimes I get made fun of for it, and other times people take it seriously. But the fact that it's in the water is, I think, a very good thing. People are thinking about it and what it means for them and so forth. This is about developing those skills and that disposition, and knowing that it's done in the service of arming our students to be prepared, whatever your points of view are, to lead and to engage with those ideas and individuals with whom you disagree, and to do it in a respectful and thoughtful way. So over the last 6 years, we've invited in a college campus that is going to necessarily have a much greater degree of folks who lean to the liberal side, and some would argue I'm being generous when I say that. Bringing the conservative voice to this campus is really important. I've tried to do that and sponsor individuals and events that do that. And I've also tried to support the 2 student organizations on our campus, the Republican group and an Eisenhower Forum, which was started a few years ago. They both are conservative student groups, which, just to say it, is one more than many campuses and 2 more than almost any campus have. Now, why haven't we had some kind of blow up, a protest, shouting down, and so forth? First of all, I think the fundamental reason for that is that our faculty, staff, and students here are very respectful of one another. And they're also respectful of this idea, although it's challenging for many of us, I'll put myself in that category, with some of the issues and ideas that can get surfaced in this moment in our history. But we have never, in the time that I've been here, had an experience where anyone has gone through that. I will say, and I've shared this with the board, it could happen. There could be a moment where all of the stars align. It isn't that we're fundamentally different or better than another place that's had an issue. These things happen for reasons that you can't really predict or control. It's just about a confluence of the stars. The thing to remember is that then you keep moving. You learn from it. What are you going to learn? How are you going to take away from that? How are you going to get better at it, and so forth? I hope it doesn't happen. We're going to do everything we can to ensure that. And I've said to folks here, if there's somebody that's coming that you disagree with strongly, come and express your point of view. Ask them the hard questions, right? If you don't want to do that, have a thing on the same night in another part of the campus where you can attract whomever you want to attract and your ideas and so forth. If you don't want to do that, go to the movies or watch TV or read a book or have dinner with your friends. But let's not get in the way of other people having an opportunity to hear from, argue with, exchange ideas, and engage with those individuals. And I hope we continue to do that. We will continue to do that.
I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you about the Endowment and Admissions. Both had incredibly successful years. Both are seeing new leadership coming in and taking the reins. How confident are you that the new leaders will be able to continue the success that we've seen there, Clayton?
So we did have great years on both, and we've had great years in the past on both. So it's a continuation of a long-term trend for both admissions and the endowment, among lots of other places on campus. Paula and Whitney are both shortly to depart, and as I've said in many places, I'm both happy and sad. Each of them is looking at a new chapter in their career after doing amazing work here over a really long period of time. And I'm sad for us and sad for me personally and so forth. The great news is we have two amazing people that both of whom were already here, who are going to take their place. Claudia Marroquin, who's a Bowdoin grad, who's going to be our Dean for Admissions and Student Aid, and Niles Bryant, who will be our new CIO. And both of them will do things differently than respectively Whitney and Paula did it. Both of them will face different challenges in the years ahead. But I have amazing confidence that both of them will do great jobs here. Both have, we joked in celebrating what Paula and Whitney did and gave them bronzed LL Bean boots that they were leaving big duck shoes to fill.
Nice.
And they are. But that's what happens at the college. We want people to come and do amazing jobs and then to be followed by somebody else who will do their job differently, do that job differently, but do it in an equally amazing way.
Well, Clayton, we've come to that part of the interview that I know you treasure so much, which is the lightning round. Are you ready for the lightning round?
I am.
Okay. They start off easy and get a little harder.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you look forward to most when Bowdoin gets back to normal?
Seeing our students without their masks, being in Thorne, and going to our athletic events, theater, dance, being inside and engaging with our community.
Favorite music to chill by or to get rowdy with?
So you'll know this well, but the Allman Brothers remains a real favorite of mine, and you were great enough to bring Chuck Lavelle here, and we gave him an honorary degree, but still one of the highlights is when he played on this stage, Jessica.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Patriots fan or not?
Yeah, I grew up in San Francisco, and I root for the 49ers, so I know it's dangerous for the
I'll take that
president.
as a not.
Yeah, not. Yeah.
Stanford Business School or HBS?
HBS.
Favorite item at Fat Boys?
Cheeseburger.
Favorite item at Bowdoin Dining Service?
Blueberry muffin.
Favorite hike in Maine?
Actually, I love the Androscoggin River, which seems simple, but Julianne and I walk there all the time, and we end up having amazing conversations and talking about everything that goes on in our lives. So for me, it's less about the walk than it is about spending time with her.
How much do you enjoy being the target on a dunk tank from a scale from 1 to 10?
That's a spinal tap. I would go to 11. So we did that yesterday as part of a way to give the students some time to chill and relax a little bit. So I got dunked twice. I will say I got dunked by two women. None of the men were up to it, but it was a gas, and it was great to see the students out there.
I saw one little clip, and you looked genuinely shocked as it.
Yeah. As much as you prepare yourself, you don't know that the seat's going to fall out from under you. Yeah.
Well, Clayton, we really look forward to seeing what unfolds over the summer and the fall, and thank you so much for your perspective and insight, and best of luck to you and everyone at the college, and we look forward to much greatness going forward.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for doing this. It's great to be with you.